Yeah, well, so Ai Fen, the doctor, she was one of the earliest whistleblowers, as to speak, about COVID-19. And already in late December, she warned about this virus in a post on the social media, WeChat in China. And after she made her first warning, of course, she was silenced by local politicians and local police in Wuhan, who didn't want her to create panic. And she was only one of several doctors and also several journalists who issued early warnings about the coronavirus and was silenced by local officials. And of course, she continued to work after her initial warning, and then she couldn't keep quiet about the situation any longer, despite the initial warnings. So in early March, she did an interview with a Chinese magazine where she also talked about the seriousness of the situation and the fact that many doctors had been infected with the coronavirus because they were forced to work without protection or good equipment. And after this interview was published in the Chinese magazine, March 10, she disappeared. It was her social media accounts stopped posting, and it was not possible to get contact with her for outsiders. And then in early April, she magically reappeared again with first some cryptic posts on her social media accounts, and then also another video conference where she was much less critical against the authorities and the situation than she was before. So it seems that after the March 10 interview was published, she has been kind of gagged or restricted about what she's allowed to say. And since early April, it's not clear what her situation is, though last week in mid-April, Radio Free Asia was able to make contact with Ai Fen, and she said that she was back in work, and she also said that the posts that she was doing on her social media accounts recently is authentic, that she wrote them herself, but seems quite obvious that she is under some kind of political pressure or restrictions at the moment.
But they have independently confirmed her whereabouts?
Yeah, according to Radio Free Asia, she is working right now, but of course that is also very hard to know because, as you know, in China with the dissidents and activists, once they are under the radar of the authorities, they live under threats, right? So they can be forced to say one thing even though they are completely somewhere else and in a complete other situation. But it seems at least that she is not imprisoned or tortured. She seems to be in a slightly better situation than many other activists, I would say. Yeah, it's still not clear where this video conference in early April took place, and it's also still not clear where and under which circumstances Ai Fen is working. But Radio Free Asia was at least able to make contact with her, and if you look at the other activists such as human rights lawyers, after they are being locked up, there is no way for foreign media or local media or anyone really to make contact with them. But in this case, Radio Free Asia was actually able to speak to her, which means that, well, at least maybe in worst case she would be in some kind of house arrest and so on, but at least she seems to be in a slightly better situation than is the case with many other activists or citizen journalists in China.
There were some reports that other doctors also had been arrested or detained. Have you heard anything about that? Because they were talking about like 7 other doctors, and I have not been able to find much information about this. Is anything known about these individuals?
I have also not found any detailed information, but those doctors were they were reprimanded at the same time as Li Wenliang, and for the same reasons. And Li Wenliang, it's known that after he was briefly arrested and forced to sign this kind of confession, if you so will, where he had to say that he is engaging in criminal activities by spreading information about the virus and so on and so forth. After he signed this confession, this paper, he was allowed to go back to work again. So it seems to me that the most reasonable explanation is that the other doctors that was reprimanded, they also most likely signed the confession just like Li Wenliang did, and then they probably got back to work just as he did. But it's hard, as you say, because I haven't seen any detailed information about those doctors. I haven't even seen their names, but it would be logical to assume that they acted like Li Wenliang and they signed this forced confession under duress, under threat, and then they got back to work again, just like he did, but with considerable difference that they didn't fall ill in the coronavirus and died. So most likely they are still working, but of course they are under surveillance, and of course they cannot speak again without more serious repercussions.